Mike Mayock, the Raiders GM, had a press conference yesterday in which said a lot of stuff, but the following is some of it on how the Raiders players and coaches are doing. Listen to this.
I've talked to several of the black players. Okay, I think we've reached out to a bunch of players, black and white. Everybody's got emotions and feelings. I've talked to some of the people in my department that are black, and my director of pro scouting, and I just said, DJ, I can't put myself in your shoes. Help me. Okay, so we've spent a pretty good amount of time trying to help these guys and talk with these guys, and not talk out at them, but with them. And the other thing I would say is just for Carl, let's be honest, he's a community of one that's openly gay. Okay, we do have a large community of African American players, and we're trying to do everything we can for that community as well, obviously.
Reactions, guys?
Please go ahead, Key. You take the mic.
No, I just was trying to process what Mike Mayock said there. In terms of speaking to black players, African American players, minority players, whatever the case may be. Speaking to Carl Nassib, the defensive lineman who was openly gay, and referring to him as one in the community, I would push back on that and say, yes, he may be one in terms of football, but that doesn't mean it doesn't affect the community as a whole. It doesn't affect people that are not openly gay, that we don't know anything about in professional sports or in football. I just think that there's some bad PR spinning going on in Las Vegas. And quite frankly, I don't want to hear from Mike Mayock any damn way. I want to hear from the owner and Mark Davis. That's who I want to hear from. I want Mark Davis to tell me how he feels about the situation that just happened with his former head coach. That's what I want him to tell us. I don't want him to tell us that he's not talking about it right now and go and speak to the NFL if you want to find out. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear him. It's his team. It's not the general manager's team. It's Mark Davis's team, who is the owner. But this is why you have a lot of dysfunctional organizations, because you have people who are handed things that act like they don't know how to run it a certain way. So that's what I got to say about the situation.
Mark Davis, I think that the unwillingness to publicly address this situation is inexcusable. I frankly think it's cowardly. Optically, it seems like his hand was forced, that he had to fire Jon Gruden, which I think sets a really poor example for the players and other executives on the Raiders organization. The fact that Mike Mayock, that Josh Jacobs, that Derek Carr, that Darren Waller have to address the media and try to dance around these issues, not knowing their owner's stance on the issue, I think puts them in a very precarious situation. And this is one of the things that's always bothered me, Key, about these organizations. You know, dealing in business, you deal with Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 500 companies. This is Fortune 32 companies right here, okay? Talking about some of the most revenue-grossing companies in the world, NFL franchises. The fact that when you sit down with the CEO, before they go on CNBC or before they publicly make an address, they literally go into a war room and they sit down with people on their media team and say, okay, here is this script. Here are our talking points. Here are things that if you say this could give off the wrong impression. Every company has this. I do not understand if Mike Mayock was in this situation, why somebody internally from the Raiders organization would not sit down with him and say, you don't say, hey, I spoke to the black players. You say, I spoke to our players. Or I spoke to Darren Waller, Key. Or I spoke to Josh Jacobs. I didn't speak to a community of one.
Jay,
I spoke to a community of millions of people.
I just
and Carl Nassib. You know what I mean? Why say these things?
Absolutely. I just laugh when I just laugh. Max, I just laugh because there's a certain way you can address this, but clearly you don't know how to address it. It just makes me laugh. I chuckle when I hear people say things like this. It's almost like you're so uncomfortable. Like you really are uncomfortable having this conversation, and they put you out there out front, like you said. And when you look at it, it just doesn't look good at all. And then when you talk about the players, okay, Derek Carr spoke, and I appreciate the way he spoke, especially yesterday about the situation. As he said, there's no place for this. Like you don't want to, you don't want to be a part of that. And Darren Waller, what you mean? They gave him an opportunity to become a professional athlete after going through so many different things in his life. So he feels a certain way about the organization. And Josh Jacobs is just a young man who's still early in the stages of his career. He trying to get to the second contract. He doesn't know what to say. You roll those guys out there because they're your star players, and they assume that people want to hear them when that may not be necessarily the case. People want to hear true feelings. People don't want to hear, oh, I'm going to serve you guys with these individuals because we kind of know what they're going to say about our organization.
What strikes me about what he said first was Carl Nassib is a community of one in terms of being openly gay. And forget about the percentages of gay people in the population and everything else, which is, anywhere. It's let's say 1 out of 20 when you look at studies and stuff like that who identify that way, whatever. The point is, if you have 100 people in an organization, the odds that there are fewer than a half dozen gay people, it's extremely low, right? It's not going to be, it's very low that it's one guy. So the question is, why is he a community of one? He didn't say as gay, he meant openly gay. Why? Because of stuff like the Gruden emails. Mm-hmm. That's why. Yeah. That's the reason. Because people are closeted because they understand the environment that they're working in is people in positions of power are hostile to them, right? Okay. So that's the first thing. And then the other thing is, and Jay, you said it, I reached out to several of our players. There's something that is tone deaf about it. Let's put it that way. It's almost like when you hear people say, and sometimes just language changes, this percentage of blacks. Even when I hear that, I'm thinking, wait, you mean black people? Or whites or something? You mean white people? There's sometimes language that indicates that the person is not that the person is the way they're thinking about it, the language they're using betrays the idea that they are thinking about it from a bygone era. And that's what it sounded like to me.
Key, if you were on this team, obviously you would speak your mind to Mark Davis and to Mike Mayock, but who is the player on this team that has to serve in that capacity? Because obviously it seems like their eyes are a little bit closed. Is there anybody that warrants that type of stature that can speak his mind openly internally to help them navigate this?
I think they all warrant it. It's just a matter, as I said before, when you start to break down different things, a team is put together by the makeup of a coach, and the coach wants a certain personality. And when you go back and you think about the personality of Jack Del Rio, tough, gritty, ex-player. You think about Reggie McKenzie, the former general manager who happens to be black, who was fired by Jon Gruden, who I believe now is a major consultant down for the Miami Dolphins. Tough, played football, has a certain way of doing things. Most of his guys, those guys that they drafted or signed as free agents or whatever, are the makeup of the team anymore. 4 years removed, Jon Gruden has put his stamp and his personality on the team so that people will answer to him and how he wanted to dictate things. So when you have players that are on their first contract or players that are respectful or graceful or appreciated of the fact that you have giving them a second opportunity like a Darren Waller, they won't step out there and be forceful in their real opinions because they don't know the backlash that they may get in the organization at the time. Now that Rich Bisaccia is taking over, it's going to be a totally different situation because Rich is true to his core values. I haven't even been in the Raiders locker